afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan French. I'm from the York and North Yorkshire Partnership Unit, and we are actually sponsoring this debate this afternoon. I'm very pleased that, having been responsible for the development of the York and North Yorkshire Local Enterprise Partnership, that this was recognised last Thursday, and we'll come to that in a minute. This sponsorship actually derived from the fact that our partnership wanted to actually show recognition for the work of Venturefest. Enterprise is clearly absolutely critical to us, creation of businesses, supporting businesses grow. It is the USP of York and North Yorkshire. It is our bread and butter, and it's absolutely essential that we sustain activities like this, which is why initially I'm standing here. But actually, local enterprise partnerships have caught up with us, and glad that we are also joining the ranks of the other two Yorkshire LEPs that have been formed, and that I can also take the opportunity today to give a plug that anybody who wishes to consider becoming a board member of our partnership, then we can go to our new website, which is ymylep.co.uk, York and North Yorkshire lep.co.uk, and find details on that. Before the debate, just some quick reminders. Mobiles off. If a fire alarm happens, it's genuine, so please use the stairs and assemble in the assembly area between the racecourse and the stand. So I'd just like now to hand over to Steve Hughes, the managing editor of the Press in York, who is going to lead the debate for us this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan, for that introduction. It's really nice to see so many of you here today, so welcome. I think we're in a fantastic venue here at York Racecourse, and hopefully many of you will have had a chance to see Venturefest in action. It's been about 4 years since I joined NewsQuest York, and in that time I've obviously had dealings with a lot of the major companies, smaller enterprises, local authorities, and politicians and business support organisations. And one thing that's very clear to me is that partnerships can help us to succeed, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Venturefest is a very good example of partnership in practice, and in these difficult times it's nice to see that innovation is alive and well. So we're here today to talk about local enterprise partnerships. The Leeds City Region Local Enterprise Partnership is already up and running, and last week York and North Yorkshire Local Enterprise Partnership was given approval to begin. So what are local enterprise partnerships? How will they work? What can they do to help create new jobs and revitalise the economy? Some of you may ask, are they even necessary? Do they replace Yorkshire Forward? But to answer those questions today, we have a distinguished panel who I would like to introduce to you now. Starting from the left, we have John Walker, National Chairman of the Federation of Small Businesses, who started his working life in banking before setting up his own small businesses. Then next to is James Newman, Chairman of the Sheffield City Region LEP, which one of the first LEPs in the country to be approved, and is also now up and running. James is also Chairman of Finance Yorkshire, a £90 million fund to help business growth. Next to James is Kirsten England, Chief Executive of York since 2009, and I think it's fair to say in the short time since then has shown her absolute commitment to working with the private sector in promoting enterprise and education. Kirsten has also recently been appointed to the board of the Leeds City Region LEP and leads on innovation for the City Region. Next to Kirsten on my left is Gary Lumby, Director of Small Business Banking at the Yorkshire and Clydesdale Bank, President of the Leeds, York and North Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce, and newly appointed board member of the Leeds City Region Local Enterprise Partnership. On my right is Barry Dodd, Chairman of Global Services and Marketing Group in Wetherby, and a board member of Yorkshire Forward, along with many other business interests. Barry recently set up The Big Conversation, a community interest company to champion the Yorkshire brand. Next to Barry, we have Andrew Palmer, a Regional Director for the Confederation of British Industry. So he is well versed in dealing with government policymakers in trying to secure the best deals for business in Yorkshire and Humberside. And previously, Andrew has worked as a scientist and business journalist for the Yorkshire Post. And finally, we have Carl Hopkins. He's a well-known Yorkshire entrepreneur. Having bought and later sold the marketing agency JDA, he has launched a variety of businesses and is one of 16 business experts appointed to Vince Cable's Entrepreneurs Forum, where he will be undoubtedly speaking up for Yorkshire business. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel. So on to the first question, which comes from Anne Salisbury. Anne.
I just wondered if the panel could give us a back to basics explanation of what the LEPs are supposed to be and how are they hoping to function.
Thank you. James, would you like to kick off on that one?
Fine. The LEPs are basically public-private sector partnerships, private sector led. They're quite different to what Yorkshire Forward is currently, in that we won't have any money. We won't have any largesse, and I'm therefore not worth knowing, probably, is the best explanation. I think that as far as the LEPs are concerned, each one will be different. Clearly the LEP in Sheffield will be different to the one and will have different emphasis to the one in North Yorkshire, because industry, the sectors and everything else are quite different. The political situation is quite different in North Yorkshire than it is in South Yorkshire. The South Yorkshire LEP particularly is interesting in that we extend the LEP into what is known as an economic area, which is another interesting part of the LEP process. The government encouraged LEPs to come together, or economic areas, drive to work, commuter areas to come together. So we have parts of Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire in our LEP, as well as parts of Yorkshire. So that's another facet which is probably slightly different. It creates some issues, especially with government agencies and Europe, who still consider Yorkshire to be a region, but we will get over those. From our perspective, we're strategy, direction, we're not delivery. We're there to create the right environment, to bring the public and private sector together in as many areas as we can. It's a huge networking exercise, one perhaps might describe it, to create some collaboration across a number of city councils that aren't collaborating that much at the moment, may have different political persuasions, which is also something quite different that's happened over the last couple of years. There's been city regions in the past, but they haven't really had any private sector involvement. These are clearly private sector involvement. And what our job is to do, as far as I'm concerned, is to create the right environment so that the public and private sector can work together to encourage industry to grow. Now, I could talk for another half an hour on it, but I won't. But that's generally how we're seeing it down in South Yorkshire.
Thank you, James. Gary, have you got a view on that, on how it's working in Leeds?
Well, it's not working at all yet, because obviously we haven't actually had our first board meeting, and that's why I potentially think a lot of the debate today will be around what might happen rather than what has already happened. I agree absolutely with what James has said. I think Leeds City Region LEP is slightly different in that we've had a Leeds City Region for of some time now, and clearly one of the LEP's board's first jobs will be to actually look back and work with the existing strategy that the Leeds City Region Board has actually created, and actually work on that to make sure that we either continue to deliver it if we think it's right, or help them change it if we think we can be improved. But I think I would sum up what the LEPs are about in terms of sort of helping create and facilitate a landscape for economic growth. And that's by working with both the private sector, both at SME and large level, but also working with the public sector on areas such as infrastructure, transport, housing, inward investment and skills. Big areas that, if we get them right, can really help businesses grow. And that's, we're not going to absolutely deliver. We're not a delivery mechanism, we're a facilitator, and we're going to help shape that landscape.
Okay, Thank you very much, Gary. Carl, I wonder if you might have a view on that. Obviously, you're this Vince Cable forum, and you've met Vince Cable and talked to him about this and how it will interact. I know you have some concerns about perhaps enterprise being stifled in the current economic climate. How do you see these LEPs working?
I compare the two, and I think that actually the Vince Cable Entrepreneurs Forum has got a much easier brief than the LEPs, because at least that's focused on enterprise, getting young people into enterprise, start-up businesses, maybe retraining people. As Gary's just said about the LEPs, the remit is so wide, you know, from transport, green issues, inward investment. It's a massive, massive remit. And for those who don't know, I tried to get involved in the LEP and failed miserably. But I always think that you've got to support these initiatives, and it's too easy to sit and criticise these initiatives without trying to be part of the solution. So I wanted to try and help out. I just think that enterprise worries me. I spend a lot of time with startup businesses, young people, and I'm seeing literally every week some initiative that supports young people and startup businesses being canned and closed. And we haven't yet started to feel the full force of the cuts that are about to come. And my worry about the LEP and the voice that I wanted to bring to that room was waving a flag for these small and startup businesses. Many people in this room here employ themselves and maybe one other person. And I think they look at the LEPs and look at some of these groups and think, well, who's speaking on my behalf? And also, not everybody is Leeds-centric. And I know that the LEP is not Leeds-centric, but it is going to build on a Leeds City region model. And I know that, you know, I'm from Calderdale area at the moment, and I come across people in Sowerby Bridge, Hebden Bridge, all these little places that think, well, who's going to represent me as well? And that was part of the reason why I threw my hat into the ring. So I'm a little concerned about unsexy sectors, like some of the creative sectors. I'm a bit concerned about unsexy geography, places like Hebden Bridge perhaps. And I'm concerned about, you know, 1- and 2-man businesses as well. And I just hope going forward that we can support the LEP, and that's an area that they look after. But it's very much an area that Cable's Club, as a friend of mine in the audience called it, they are focused on, because they want people to create jobs, not go looking for jobs. And I think that's not a bad thing to aim for, if we can get people to create their own jobs. But as I say, I think actually that's an easier brief than what the LEPs have been given.
Okay, thank you, Carl. What does this mean to small businesses, though? Or what would you like to see it do for small businesses, John?
Well, the government's clearly looking on the small business sector to try and help with the inevitable unemployment that's going to be caused over the coming period. And certainly the LEPs will have their part to play in trying to make a better business environment for that. It's very early stages at the moment for precisely what they'll be able to do. We've heard from the other panellists that they'll have a facilitating role and perhaps a strategic role, but not an implementation role. The implementation will be done by the authorities who will be charged with that anyway. So it's bringing people together to try and make an area function better economically for the good of all types of businesses.
Okay, John Walker, thank you. I should explain that we're also getting questions coming in via the internet and Twitter, so we're going to flit about a bit during the course of the debate. Anne, you okay with the question? Any further questions? Okay, thank you. So we move on to the next question. I don't have a name for this one. How do we ensure the new York and North Yorkshire LEP is embedded in the Leeds City region thinking? I don't know who would have a best view on that.
I don't know if I should take that in, just because I sit in both.
Person.
So maybe I'll pick that one up. And York, as with Barnsley's, I think we were reflecting for the Sheffield City region, is within 2 local enterprise areas. And just to kind of touch on that then, local enterprise partnerships are designed around real economic geographies, so how the economy works for a place. And clearly, the city region, largest self-contained economy outside London, 3 million people, actually there's a very strong case for that. And there are very particular things that flow across the city region. And a lot of the things I think Carl touched on, IT, creative, digital, healthcare, technology, some aspects of manufacturing, some aspects of tourism and so on. However, there are real dimensions of the wider York and North Yorkshire, such as rural development, some aspects of tourism, some parts of our health and social care economy, which don't particularly function as part of the Leeds City region. And clearly, we in York need to be working on both aspects of our economy. You will know that there are 3 district councils that are a member of the Leeds City region that are actually technically in North Yorkshire County Council. That's Selby, Craven and Harrogate. And the County Council, Jonathan was speaking from the County Council, is also a member of the Leeds City region. So we are working hard in both of those arenas to work on the things that matter in the right spatial geography. A lot of jargon, a lot to sort out in it, but the essence of it is to avoid the duplication. So we lead on things in the right arena.
Thank you very much. Yes, Andrew.
No, I think that's a very good point to say about duplication, because what we're going to have, we've now got 3 LEPs, and what we've got to look at is how we mustn't fragment the region in all of this, and we've got to look at how the region can still come together. And so it might be that Leeds and Sheffield and York and North Yorkshire work together on certain things. So it might be that one key area does manufacturing, one does innovation, but we mustn't fragment the region in all of this. It must all come together.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Barry, have you got a view on that?
Yes, I hope everybody can hear me, because I don't think the microphones are that great. So let me just start with what is a LEP. Being a businessman and a cynic, it's permission to have a conversation. That's it. That's what it boils down to. And the other thing I would say is it's the only show in town. So somebody already made the point, get involved, because there isn't anything else there available. Quite different to Yorkshire Forward, it's got no money. So what are we going to do? Now, to take up your point, Andrew, about fragmentation, the thing that worries me about LEPs are they should not be competitive. James Newman and I had this discussion earlier on about competition. It isn't going to help at all if they become competitive. So your point is well made. You know, they should cooperate. One of the reasons I launched the Big Conversation Yorkshire was to try and do that in a formalised manner. And I say in a formalised manner because if you can have some kind of lightweight structure to do it that really forces people to think about cooperation, then you're more likely to achieve it because you can do it according to a plan. And that, I think, is really important, because what Yorkshire has that's different to any other part of the country is a great brand. You know, Yorkshire is what we recognise. If you go out there and you say, what are Yorkshire people like, you'll get answers. You go to Essex and say what Essex people like, you'll probably get answers as well. But sorry, Andrew, I didn't. But we have a really strong identity. And what do we know in business? Use your brand, because the brand is worth something. So we've really got to sweat the brand to make sure that we can attract things like inward investment and so on. And that's what I would do as a businessman. So yes, it's a talking shop, but it does have assets that we can actually sweat.
Can I just comment on that? You know, as a marketeer, one of the things that really bothered me was with the demise of Yorkshire Forward was actually that we've lost that brand. We had an umbrella brand. It didn't matter if you were in Hull, Sheffield, York. It didn't matter if you were in tourism or whatever aspect of business. There were people out there that were pushing the brand of Yorkshire, you know, and it means lots of different things, lots of people. So I think straight away we've lost that anyway, as far as I can see, because everything's a LEP. There's no brand values to a LEP. You know, we spent all that time and money building up brand values and a brand essence and a brand presence and a brand leverage, all these lovely marketing terms in Yorkshire Forward, you know, alongside a sister brand like Welcome to Yorkshire, and straight away we've turned our back on that. And that's a disaster as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think Andrew wants to come in.
I'd already written down that we have so many distinctive brands here, and we have, whether it be York, Sheffield, Hull, Calderdale or whatever, that we have the brands. We've got a richness in the region that we should be playing on. We should play our cards to get a net win, and we should cooperate, as you're saying.
I think you're preaching to the converted here. So.
I would just make the point, we don't need to lose the brand. It's an absolute choice for us. If you take the localist approach, it's down to us to do that. I just also wanted to make another point, though, because a number of people said we don't have any money, unlike Yorkshire Forward. The whole agenda here is about rebalancing the economy through private sector growth and private sector leverage and funding. And actually, one of the best conversations, and I do agree with Barry, it's about conversations that has come out of the city region and the innovation work, and some of the members of the innovation panel are in the audience, I can see Sterling over there, is actually about getting investors around the table who actually want to talk to some of the emerging businesses in the table, collaborative conversations about trade missions, you know, not doing what UKTI do, but going ourselves and doing it. And actually, all of the regional growth fund bids, I think this is very important, had to be both private sector sponsored and have significant amounts of private sector funding committed to them to leverage in what public sector funding there is. And I think We have to move away from thinking, you know, we're all going to hell in a handcart, there's no money from government, and actually be the entrepreneurs that the private sector are renowned for being, and look at how we access finance in different sorts of ways.
I mean, this is the most difficult conversation that I have constantly, and have since I became chairman 3 months ago, is trying to impress upon people that, especially in the private sector and even in the startup sector, that the grant culture has got, everybody has to understand, the grant culture has gone forever. There will be certain very small specific grants, but the business link type of grant, the central government type of grant, all of that is the Yorkshire Forward type of grant, all of that is gone, and it's gone forever, and the private sector, whether we like it or not, we have to pick up and do it on our own. And if a project's worth doing, then we will get on and we will find the finance and we will do it. What the problem was before was that the projects in many cases possibly were not worth doing, but were only worth doing if there was a grant there to do it in the first place. And I think that's where the culture change needs to come. And part of the LEP's role, I believe, is to keep banging on that message to everybody and creating the sort of leadership and networks and sector groups or whatever, however you decide to organise yourselves under the main LEP board, to create the right environment so that everybody from the small startup entrepreneur to the large business understands that they'll only get support if it's a good project, and even the banks will support good projects.
Steve, I just want to say something on the brand stuff, because just going back to that, we still have Welcome to Yorkshire, of course. It's still here this year, and it's going to be doing a great job. We've got Finance Yorkshire. Alex is sitting in the front row there. It's a really great, important brand for us. You know, we've got Business Link Yorkshire. It's still going to be here through till November, and we've even got Yorkshire Bank, although I would say that, wouldn't I? But I'm going to say, so we've still got some really strong Yorkshire brands out there under that brand Yorkshire umbrella. But going back to the money, as Jim said, there is some money to tap into. You know, whether it's ERDF funding, for example, and I know we're going to be talking about regional growth funds in a second. I'm not going to go on about that now, but we'll pick that up later. And there is also money directed at particularly growth businesses through the growth hubs. Boards. And we're very hopeful of having, through the good play of Science City York, through a growth hub in this region. So there is money. We just have to be very, very careful about how we access it and make sure that we match it with private sector and get the private sector really involved in delivering value for money services that SMEs and businesses are prepared to pay for. Because as Jim said, it is going to be a user pays mentality.
Okay, thanks, Gary. I think we need to move on and get some more questions in. And while we're on the subject of money, the next one sort of follows on quite nicely from that, really, and comes from Sam Host. Is Sam in the room somewhere?
Hi,
okay.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear? What is the relationship between the Regional Growth Fund and the LEP, and how will they work together?
No.
Okay. Again, I think it's another one for James really to pick up on initially.
Yeah. Basically, there is no relationship whatsoever. It's as simple as that. The Regional Growth Fund is a BIS initiative. They are managing it. Lord Heseltine and Sir Ian Wrigglesworth are chairing and deputy chairing an advisory panel consisting of a number of people. Are you on it? No, but consisting of a number of people, mainly from down south, you'll all be glad to know. And they will be advising a government committee of ministers, chaired fortunately by Nick Clegg, who is at least a Northern MP, on these projects. Round one will be, as I think Neil McLean described it, as sticking plaster. I described it as ribbon cutting projects, just to keep things going. Round two is going to be the most important, and that's going to be about support programs, which I think most of us probably in this room are more concerned about, is to see what sort of business support. And I hope that the LEPs will be involved in that. But it was far too early for the LEPs to get involved in the other, in the initial bids. Leeds, I know, claimed that they got involved in those bids. They probably coordinated a few things as we did. and we supported a number of bids, but the LEPs certainly were not in a position to decide whether a bid was a good bid or a bad bid.
Yeah, you mentioned about coordinating the LEPs. There is a role there for the LEPs
Yes.
to coordinate
In
the
the
RGF bids, because it will lead to a greater case of attracting investment to the region,
focus.
and then they can help focus in on those
Absolutely.
issues.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the and Kirsten will have a view on this, I'm sure, the RGF is a £1.4 billion pot of money over a number of years, and it's not going to be able to replace the work that Yorkshire Forward or the other organisations delivered. It was significantly oversubscribed on the first round. My understanding, I think it was about 468 bids of at least £1 million and rising up to
2 billion.
Yeah, 2 billion altogether. So significantly oversubscribed. Only 250 million, I think, around that figure is available in tranche 1. So therefore, there's going to be some disappointed bids out there. But I completely agree with Andrew. We've got to really coordinate as 3 and hopefully eventually 4 LEPs, that we actually don't step on each other's toes and work together, so that the region gets the biggest bang for its buck.
And I think there's an opportunity, certainly in the areas of programs around access to finance, business support, to actually do that as a region. And as I will promote Finance Yorkshire as a particular opportunity and a brand to be able to do that. And there may be other opportunities as well to do that.
Thank you,
Can I come in there, Steve? How many people in this room have actually ever started a business? There's quite a few people here. Interestingly, how many people in this room started a business that was well funded?
I think point through, Harry.
Well done, you.
So don't worry about the regional growth fund. Let's worry about what really
I
changes.
think what's coming across, or seems to be coming across here quite clearly, is in terms of funding, we seem to be in a very different place than we were a few years ago. So I think that message is coming across. We must move on to another question now from Carl Wilson, in the middle of the room there.
Hi there. I think a couple of the questions have already been asked, but I think what's the practical solutions that the LEP are going to actually put together for small to medium businesses? I think it sounds like that there's not a lot of idea at the moment, but is there anything in the pipeline?
Pick up on that, Kirsten?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start on that, only because I lead on innovation and economic development for the city region, and we launched last year as a city region, not as an enterprise partnership, something called the Innovation Capital Programme, which I know there are a few copies lurking about. And that was actually a manifesto, if you like, for business growth across the city region based on the emerging strongest sectors in the city region, those likely to generate prosperity and growth. And so that's IT, creative, digital, biosciences, medical, healthcare technologies, some aspects of manufacturing. And there is now a panel of private and public sector, predominantly private sector people, who are meeting to drive that forward. And what we're trying to do practically, we're trying to connect the world-class and world-leading research of our universities. We have 8 universities in the city region. That's the most anywhere in a city region. And there's fantastic research going on in there, most of which goes abroad as it creates wealth. So we're trying to capture that in the healthcare medical technologies area, the biosciences. I think we acknowledge advanced manufacturing is really Sheffield's real bag, but nonetheless. So we're trying to connect university expertise to both spin-out companies, and again, there are a number of people in this room who I think are graduates of one of the universities and started spin-out companies. We're trying to connect it to business growth at critical points for small businesses across these sectors. So we've been recently brokering relationships between Leeds around engineering, some of the companies in Bolton and so on, things like that. So we're trying to strengthen the supply chain for businesses by creating sector networks around each of these things, so that actually people know where their supply chain is across the city region and beyond. We get the right relationships going with each other. As I said, there are investors who actually want to invest in some of the emergent businesses. We're also starting to talk about inward investment and actually the brand we need to promote for whether it's York, the city region, whether it's Yorkshire, and how we might take that forward in terms of bringing people here to see what we have to offer. And finally, in terms of sourcing markets abroad, because let's also remember that one of the big things that we have to do is grow our economy through export. you know, everybody agrees that that is one of the main things that we have to become better at, is globally competitive. Those are some of the practical things we're doing, as well as the incubation sites. And there are people here, for example, from York St John, where we have a Phoenix Centre incubation site for the creative industries. We're providing space at low cost for those companies that Barry talks about that get started on no money. That's a feel for some of what we've done and are doing and will do more of. But I would just echo, we're not a delivery organisation as an enterprise partnership. We will enable all of this work to happen.
At that point on exports is quite important. There's a particular need to tackle underperformance in smaller, export underperformance in SME market.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to bring in John here, if I could, in terms of small businesses, because a lot of the people on the panel are sort of obviously very well versed in what's going on regionally, but nationally, John, what does some of this mean for the very small businesses? How can they get involved in their LEPs?
Well, 97% of businesses employ less than 20. Over half the country's economy is derived from small and medium-sized enterprises, and over half the private sector workforce is employed by small and medium-sized enterprises. So that's the constituency of business that's going to deal with the economic challenges that we have. And there's a great potential there. Most of the new jobs created over the past few years have come from that sector. They've not come from large business. And therefore, a lot of the practical points which is raised in the question said will be taking to help. It's just sort of, I would have a shopping list of please try and have practical ideas rather than too much what I would call strategic planning jargon. And it's trying to get down to the nuts and bolts. Transport links, broadband in the rural areas I know is an issue here. And over the coming period, there's going to be a lot of people being made redundant, particularly from the state sector, may well want to try and set up businesses to make a living for themselves rather than be somebody on the dole. And therefore maybe the LEP's got some strategic role to take in trying to help deal with what I have described over the years as enforced self-employment, from people trying to make a living for themselves. Public procurement. Maybe the LEP could get involved in trying to encourage the public sector to engage more with the small business sector. I know there's been various initiatives on that, but there's always still more that can be done. And you have a large armed forces tradition in this part of the world, and there's going to be unemployment coming from, unfortunately, from many of our very dedicated members of the armed forces. So there's a lot of work that the strategic role can be done to provide practical solutions on the ground to make the economy more effective, and what the government sees is the entrepreneurial small business sector trying to help the country's unemployment go down through increased economic activity.
Thank you, John. I'll maybe bring Carl in here in terms of entrepreneurship. Carl, what I was wondering is there a danger that some small companies might think LEPs aren't for me, that's for the bigger companies?
Well, I think I'm already hearing that on my travels. But I think a lot of points John's just made are very much top of the agenda nationally about armed forces, reskilling, retraining those people, long-term unemployed, getting them back into work. But I think we've got to accept as well that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. People, there are some people that it just doesn't apply. That's not in their psyche, and especially a lot of people who are going to come out of these public bodies. They've been in there what they thought were jobs for life. They are not the next James Caan, I'm afraid, and they need employment. So we need to, really fan the flames of entrepreneurs in order to create that employment as well. But I do hear a lot of what people are concerned about that. As I say, the LEPs don't represent me as a startup business. I think the comment that Carl's made about, well, what do you actually deliver? I think we've established the LEPs facilitate, they don't deliver. But at the same time, the small businesses are seeing the demise of Business Link, for instance. And there is advice, there is training, there is consultation, there is access to information and signposting. And I think when people say, well, are the LEPs going to deliver that? They probably don't expect the LEP to deliver that, but they want to know who will be delivering that. And I know that nationally they're replacing Business Link with this bizarre mentoring scheme. Which, has everybody heard about this? 400,000 mentors for free. Would you trust a mentor that was free? No, everybody's going to so, you know, that's kind of scary as well. So I don't think anybody's convinced that something else is being put in its place. And I would echo Carl's comments about, well, who's going to deliver that? As a small business, who am I going to turn to help me set these things up? Because it's all fantastic talking about broadband and access to research, but if I want to start a bun shop in Hebden Bridge, I might not need broadband or access to research. I just need help with, you know, how do I do a profit and loss account? You know, how do I talk to somebody about my first steps in marketing?
I think where the LEPs can help, and we're seeing this already in some of the worklessness programs, that are national programs that are run by government departments but potentially delivered locally, is where the LEP can start to influence that. And like all northern regions, there's a lot of public sector workers are going to lose their jobs, and there needs to be an awful lot of retraining, there needs to be an awful lot of getting people into different jobs. But there are government schemes at the moment, and there seems to be quite a lot of money around. What we don't want, certainly in Sheffield, for instance, as an example, we don't want the 4AEs or the Remploys or anybody else of this world who are given government money to employ textile workers in South Yorkshire, because that would be a total waste of time because we haven't got the jobs for them. So this is where the LEPs, I believe, can start to influence government policy in terms of, fine, if you've got money and you've got schemes, and there's a lot of talk after the employment statistics this morning about getting people back to work and youth unemployment. That's fine, but it needs to be focused, and the money doesn't need to be, huge amounts of money don't need to be spent on training people to do things where there aren't the final jobs there, and that's the key to it, is using the money more intelligently, and that, I think, is where the LEPs can actually start, because they've got focus in their local regions. The LEPs can start to influence government in terms of where they spend their money from a national perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say in summary of that, I would say that if we do not create an enterprise culture more than we've got now in this region over the next 3 years via the LEPs and via the private and public sector, we have simply failed. We have failed small businesses, and we have failed private individuals who want to start small businesses. That is going to be one of our main priorities. How we do it remains to be seen, but it's got to be absolutely at the top of the list.
Thank you, Gary. In terms of practical actions then, I think we've had a lot of answers there, and we could obviously talk about this for many more hours. But hopefully, Carl, there's a few suggestions there for you in terms of practical actions that the LEPs can take. And that leads me on to the next question. I haven't got a name for this. This is one that's come through on the internet, which I'd like to put to you, Gary, to start with, really, because it follows on. And it says, the LEP boards are impressive, but they don't necessarily cover the voice of SMEs and rural businesses. How will the LEPs ensure that this is taken into account, especially given the importance of SMEs to Yorkshire's economy, which is pretty much what we've just been talking about, but I just wanted to put you on the spot a bit, Gary, in terms of the Leeds City region. How are you going to deal with that?
Well, I've got to say that small businesses are, you know, we might not have Carl, and that's a shame because Carl would have been a great addition to the board. But I've got to say we've got many people who represent small businesses on the Leeds City Region board. You know, from the public sector as well as from the private sector. You know, with my Director of Small Business hat on for Yorkshire, I represent all our small business customers. I represent all our chairman members, many of which are small businesses. I run 2 small businesses myself with my wife, so I know what it's like to run a small business. So I do think, and we've got Stephanie Burris from Leeds Ahead who represents, you know, social enterprises. I think we have got a lot of small businesses, but also some of those business owners on that board. Stephen Kennedy from CPP, they do work with small businesses as well. So I think, you know, small businesses are very well represented, despite Cal not being there.
Thank you, Gary. And I think the York and North Yorkshire LEP is looking for board members at the moment. So if there are any SMEs out there who are interested, perhaps they can get in touch with them.
Steve, I think more importantly, I think York and North Yorkshire LEP has to major on the rural areas.
Yeah.
And I think it can then fan out. You know, if you actually look at Leeds City Region, there's an awful lot of rurality there as well. So I'm looking for the York and North Yorkshire LEP to be a champion of the rural areas.
Right, very good point. Thank you, Barry. Okay, the next question from Jeanette, I think, Gudgeon of the North Yorkshire and Business Education partnership. Jeanette, are you there?
Thank you, yeah.
Slight problem with the microphone.
Sorry, can you
I
hear
think.
that?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, Jeanette Gudgeon from Knavesmire. Education was mentioned very briefly early on in the debate, in the opening, but I just wondered...
Sorry, Jeanette, we can't hear you. And we...
Hello? Is that any better? Is that any better?
No.
Jeanette Gudgeon from Knavesmire.
Yeah.
Yes. You mentioned education early on in the debate,
Yes.
but I just wondered if you could give a view on the extent to which you feel enterprise skills are important to be developed in schools while students are in schools and colleges, and how employers can engage with this agenda.
Okay, how enterprise can tie in with education in schools and colleges. Have I got that right?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody who would like to pick up on that? Education first?
I mean, it starts at school, and I would say it's something we haven't done as well in this region as elsewhere. And actually, the Sheffield City region has done a lot of good work on it, I think you have. And I was very captivated by the Rotherham Readies scheme, which you probably know of, where school children as young as 5 are given a checkbook and start businesses. And I do know from the time in West Yorkshire, a lot of work done on Dragon's Den type principles.
Yeah.
And I think we have to find new, fresh, imaginative ways of getting it as embedded in the curriculum. I think it's a challenge for NIBEC, if I can throw it back to you, because I think we need to innovate and make it more than just work experience and work placements. So it's a living, breathing part of the curriculum from the day you enter education. So I hope that's, and certainly from my authority, that's what we intend to do.
Could I just add to that? I was a judge on Enterprising Britain, and we chose Rotherham Ready this year, and they do some incredible work in Rotherham Ready, starting at that 5 years and onward. And in fact, that's been so successful as a programme, they're now going to rebrand that as its own brand and roll that out across Yorkshire areas, talks places like Hull and in Calderdale and Kirklees as well. I probably go into a school or university once a week. And with Rotherham Ready, I went and speak to teachers, which is what Rotherham Ready are interested in. It's not just about getting the kids in the mindset. We've got to get the teachers in the mindset to get the kids in the mindset, because obviously the teachers are there, and that in itself is a bit of a challenge, because again, teachers are not necessarily entrepreneurs, if you like, and don't, enterprise is not something on the agenda that they have to worry about. There are issues with enterprise in school that I'm coming across. The schools are given enterprise budgets, but the budgets are not ring-fenced, so they end up buying basketballs or fixing the gym roof or something like that, which is perfectly understandable. But there is, again, a desire at regional and national level to get enterprise into our young people. But it's how do we ring-fence that? And then how do we set up something that sits alongside the national curriculum and is taken as seriously as history and geography? Because I spend a lot of times in some really interesting schools in Yorkshire, and not every kid is academic. But they have other skills. They've got personnel skills, they've got creative skills, they've got skills that we need to find, and we need to match those aspirations. But also we've got to work with employers about the expectation, because lots of people in this room have all employed kids from school, and they're not always matching up to what we need out of our future employees, if you like. So there is a lot of work going on at the moment. But again, some of those things are already suffering. I've seen activity agreement closed down that works with young people that are maybe not academically strong. Enterprise UK has run out of funding, and that did an awful lot of great ideas like, entrepreneurs for a tenner and things like that. But then there are issues with starting up businesses. I meet lots of young guys who want to start up a business at 16, 17. They can start a business up, but they can't have a bank account. So that's a problem as well. So we've got to address some of these issues as well.
Okay, I think Andrew from the CBI.
I was going to concur with quite a lot of what you said there. I was a judge last year and many things as young enterprise, and I was totally impressed with the way that those kids from school just went and they did the marketing, they looked at sales, exporting, all sorts of things, and it was just fabulous seeing all of that coming together. And actually Richard Lambert, when he was Director General of the CBI, made it a point that we all had to go into schools. He went into schools himself to really hammer home that this point with teachers and with kids. And I go around and seen some great schools in this region. They're doing it quite a lot, and we've got to look at that as well on the enterprise debate, get the National Apprenticeship Service looking at all of these big issues.
Can I just say that in South Yorkshire there is a huge programme run by Business Education South Yorkshire, which is all about going into the schools and getting the kids on the entrepreneurial trail, on the innovation, We particularly focused on manufacturing because what we wanted to do was try to encourage, especially in South Yorkshire, more children to get involved in manufacturing activities rather than being accountants, lawyers or bankers, frankly, because it's part of the overall skills shortage agenda that a lot of firms in South Yorkshire have. So they have supported it. There's a scheme called Workwise, where there are people like Kevin Parkin from Davy and others who are, and they meet once a month with the kids, and they have breakfast meetings starting at 7 in the morning, and the kids are there, and they present what they're doing in terms of starting their own businesses and so on. And the key is getting the teachers enthused, but once you've done that, then actually it's a really good program to develop, and the Rotherham Road is part of that process as well. And I think that this needs to come as part of the overall skills agenda, that we actually start in the schools, getting people involved in the industries that we want them to get involved in the whole of Yorkshire. So in Leeds it will be, we want scientists or innovators or whatever. In Yorkshire, we'd like some engineers, please. And that's where you start, but it's generational, and it won't happen. It won't happen in 5 years. It may happen in 10.
Okay, thank you, James. Jeanette, you've obviously touched a nerve there because I think everybody wants to come in. John from the Federation of Small Businesses.
Thank you. I mean, maybe one of the objectives these LEPs could consider doing is having a what is going on at the moment sort of strategy, finding out, because often new organisations come in and you've got to try and avoid duplication. I mean, where I come from, in another part of the country, there used to be the education business partnerships, and I've done presentations in schools, and I have to say I found the lower sixth, the awareness amongst them as to what the difficulties and challenges that entrepreneurs and small business people have, I was quite surprised, and the high awareness there was. I know quite a few of their parents have probably had that. And then there's the Bradford Business Game, where you try and encourage, where business people give up a day to go and spend in a school with an age group that's suitable for the particular type of presentation or activity. And maybe the LEP could find out what's going on in its area and try and give it a bit of a push. Because if the government wants to have entrepreneurs of the future, back to that point I made, there's a great emphasis in government at the moment about entrepreneurs sorting out the economy. And I agree with the point made on the panel that not everybody is an entrepreneur, but those that are can be encouraged. And if you start using that word enough, you might find some money follows it into the LEP. You never know. Okay,
John, thank you very much. I think some good points coming there. And Barry, you got some practical experience.
From practical experience, I actually did all my schooling in the United States, and this was absolutely normal for our schools. And the most important thing is to get the, I guess in this country called the headmaster, enthused, because they can really determine what happens in their school. And if you have to roll this out, I would have a recruitment system for headmasters or mistresses, whatever they're called, to make sure they understand the importance of it. When you start talking about entrepreneurialism, you guys think of it as a particular thing. I call it business. And what we learnt at school was business. And we learnt how to make money, how to make a profit, how important it was as we grew up. It was just normal to do that. And so maybe we're not making entrepreneurs when we follow this program, but if we make business people who can then work in other businesses and understand and are savvy, that's a very, very important thing to do. So this is what I would say to the audience. You know, you put your hands up to say that you'd started a business not so long ago. What you have to do is to put some time into this. And I would say to you, everybody here who's ever started a business has had trouble. And that's what students want to know about. They want to know about the highs and lows, as well as how to run a business. What you should be doing, and what the LEPs should be doing, is to have a recruitment process, and then give a little bit of time each year for every business person in this room. I'm not talking about advisors, because when I was at school, we didn't believe advisors. But we did understand and recognize business people. So what you need to do is to volunteer to do that, put that little bit of time in. If 100 people put 2 days a year in, you know, we'd have a big change. But that has to be driven by the head of the school. Unless they're enthusiastic about it, it doesn't mean a thing, because they can put all kinds of extra resource in and after-hours schooling and so on. So LEPs come on, let's have this recruitment process. Let's see how it can be done.
Okay, sorry, Steve. I would say that one challenge will be to get, big business has been involved in schools, we've heard that. I think where the challenge will be, John, is where SMEs, small, particularly S, get involved in schools, as Barry's just said. We've got to try and find ways of getting small businesses wanting to be involved in schools and putting something back, because they will really motivate the kids more.
Okay, thank you. Well, a challenge has been thrown down to you all then there, but I think some very good suggestions there for how business can get involved in schools and colleges. Jeanette, I hope that answers your question. Okay, good. Well, we're beginning to come to the end now, so we're not going to get through all the questions, I'm afraid, but there's still coming in. Some coming in, as I mentioned earlier, via Twitter, and I have one here from at Nick Eggleton. Is Nick in the audience, or? He is.
Hello.
Hi, Nick.
I actually think my question's been answered earlier by one of the other questions. It was about York's position greedily being in 2 LEPs and how that profits the people of York and the businesses of York in terms of creating wealth and adding value.
This is the 2 LPs.
Yeah.
Talk about the 2 LPs working together, really.
How does York profit by being involved with both LEPs in terms of creating wealth?
Kirsten, because she's got a foot in both camps.
I'll only pick it up very quickly, and I'll be very honest. I'm very parochial and partisan on the behalf of York, and so we'll only be in 2 LEPs if it genuinely grows our economy. The other thing I would say is York, all the studies show York's is the most independent economy in all of these economies. The Work Foundation work of Will Hutton showed that. And we have a very strong local enterprise partnership in York that Nestle, Aviva, CPP, the university, Ware and Kay, Barry on occasion, I think, turned up at it. And, we have big business there, it's private sector led. It's been going since Norwich Union and Nestle and Terry's had difficulties. And do you know what? The York economy is growing and growing strongly at the moment. It's the most buoyant city north of Northampton. So, we work from that perspective. We'll do what works locally and we'll get into partnership with other people if it grows our economy. That's my job. So.
Thank you, Kirsten. Anyone want to pick up on that quickly, or have we dealt with that one, do you think? Okay. Okay, time for possibly one more question from Kevin Kiley.
Kevin Keeley from Medilink.
Sorry.
Yeah, from Medilink. Can we represent the health technologies and related life science businesses across Yorkshire and Humber? And the question relates to whether there is going to be any mechanism for collaboration across the LEPs in order to support strategically important sectors such as healthcare, or will we see a Leeds City Region healthcare strategy, a Sheffield City Region healthcare strategy, etc.?
We have a debate going on here as to who should go first. Kirsten's going to go first.
The answer is absolutely yes. And then, in fact, Barry and I were in a meeting a week or 10 days ago debating what it is we need to sustain across local enterprise partnership areas. And we talked about some of the sector networks. I think we were talking about the food industry, weren't we, as an example of that. Tourism is another example. I'd absolutely say where a sector works across a wider geography, economic geography, we have to sustain those sector networks and support, because economies don't observe administrative boundaries, do they? And we're trying to grow an economy here, so let's be practical about it. And Barry is the one who's, well, I think really you're the one leading those conversations that need to take place with support. But, yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Kirsten. I think you're absolutely right. We do need to go cross-sector. We do need to go cross-LEP, certainly. And it isn't just the medical people that need to consider that. Now, this is what I would put to you. The old way of doing sector support is never going to work in the future. And you really have to understand that some of your big companies are going to have to put some money and time into this. This is going to be a two-way street. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Welcome to Yorkshire, whether we're talking about Medilink, or whether we are talking about the food sector. The companies involved are going to have to understand if they want some benefit out of it, they're going to have to put some effort in. So yes, we want sectors to be cross-LEP. It wouldn't work any other way. And it may well be that certain LEPs can lead on certain sectors because they're most important there. And you'd expect that, wouldn't you? But I put it to you that a lot of the cure for this is in your hands. What you need is the facilitation to do that and the encouragement to do that. But you really need to look at your business plan. And I've certainly had this discussion with the Regional Food Group, who do great work, but it's a very expensive way to operate at the moment. And we referred earlier on to not having any money or having very little money. That is a good thing, because all the people that started the businesses here, if you'd have been adequately funded, I'll tell you what, you'd have made more mistakes. And the fact is, because we haven't got much money, you're going to have to think really hard about it. So I absolutely encourage you to think big, but think hard about what the costs are.
I think everybody realises the importance of healthcare to the regional economy. There's no doubt about that. We've got some fantastic examples of success stories, but there's no way we'll let that diminish or wither on the vine. Absolutely no way. But we need to work with you, and certainly the private sector is going to come in with some funding.
And so what the LEPs need to do there is they need to successfully showcase the best of breed, really, and make sure that we're hitting that agenda.
And where it's appropriate, Leeds may lead on the innovation in the healthcare sector. Sheffield may lead on the manufacturing of the products at the end of the day. So it will need to be a coming together. If there are already good networks working across Yorkshire, healthcare, CO2, manufacturing, then a lot of that needs to stay in place, which is what Barry and myself and Gary and a number of others have spent probably the last 9 months trying to keep together as far as Yorkshire is concerned, once the demise of Yorkshire Forward was made known, to try to establish what areas did we need to keep together if and when the LEPs came to fruition. Fortunately, a number of us actually now have some influence in this process. From a LEP perspective. So I think you can be assured that if something is working and it's lean and mean, and we believe that it's best that Yorkshire fights its corner as Yorkshire, then we will work as much as we can to maintain it.
If I can come in there, I think one of the myths is that everything happens in silos, you know, and advanced manufacturing is really interesting, because in my factory in Oxford, you would see all kinds of technologies, from electronics to heavy press shop to IT people working together. And to win in the future, we need to look at where the technologies overlap. So my vision for sectors is that you have strong sector support, but somehow we've got to get people together to win at the boundaries, because all the best things happen there. You know, it's bioinformatics. What does it mean? Well, it means two things coming together, doesn't it? So if we're smart in the future, we'll just look at it slightly differently.
Okay, thank you, Barry. We need to conclude there. I think you'll agree that it's been a fascinating discussion. We could have easily gone on for another hour. I apologise to the people whose questions we didn't get to, but I think there are some really clear messages have come out of the debate. Brand Yorkshire is certainly still very much alive and well. I think another key message was that it's up to you to tap into your LEPs and ask questions and get involved, and that this is really the start of a conversation. And finally, there's no bloody money. But thank you very much to my panellists, and hopefully you found that useful.
So thank you, Steve, for that. Just to say that, you know, many people have not been able to answer their questions, and if you do go to hashtag VF Debate and also the LinkedIn group, you can carry on this conversation. Just thank you very much for attending the debate. There are now two further presentations this afternoon. One is Ask the Sales and Marketing Expert panel, and the other is the Angels Den Clinic upstairs, starting about a minute ago, but I'm sure actually they're waiting for you now, and if you go upstairs if you want to follow those things. Otherwise, let's thank the panel again for their excellent presentations.